for our next hour of intrigue and excitement and mystery. I'm so excited to have you, Sandra. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for coming on.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. I hope that listeners will be encouraged and infused with hope and dare to believe God for the impossible, because that is who He is. He does do the impossible, and He is our daring hope.
Amen. And I love that catchphrase, daring hope. I hope that, I said hope too. I'm hoping that we dive into that because I listened to your story again today just because I wanted to, be refreshed and make sure I remember everything. And that is what stands out when you tell your story. You dared to actually hope, which so many of us forget to do. Yeah. And so I love that that's what you chose to emphasize, because there's so much in this story that you really could focus on, but you chose hope. And I love that. And Kim, if you don't mind, I'm going to just ask her right now. Is that okay? Like, why? What made you decide that hope was going to be your focus in all of this?
Just with everything going on, I think we need those rays and those glimmers of hope. And that when things are out of our hands, He's the one to turn to, because He has the answers. And I'll kind of go over this later, but Easter weekend, it was actually Easter Sunday, I came across Mark 5:34 in the Passion Translation, and it says, "Daughter, because you dared to believe." Oh. And I just feel like there were parts in the different mysteries that I had in my life. I just always had like this ray of hope that even though if I let it go, or even if I was holding on to something, that He could bring it about, and that I was going to go out of this world believing He could. I mean, I guess that's, I just, like, it may be my last breath, but I thought it was going to come about. So I hope that people believe that we're called to believe more than we're. And I was even challenged this weekend from someone else's story that, gosh, maybe I need to believe for this. Maybe He's calling me to believe for more things. Wow. And I think He is with all of us. Like, it's a bridge of partnering with Him.
Wow. Amen. I love that. Dare to believe, because I never thought until you said the phrase daring hope that it actually takes courage to hope when there's nothing in the natural to give you hope. Exactly. So because you have to have courage when you are risking disappointment, right? You have to be brave. Yeah. So tell us, Sandra, what did that look like for you? Like, what did you have to dare to hope about? And you can start at the beginning, and we're just going to let you tell your story here today. Try not to interrupt you too much. But we really want to hear your story in its entirety. And what our viewers don't know is that as we've been connecting with you over these last months, even since 2019, about your story, and talking about, parts of your story that relate to your mother, you've had some very recent developments in your story as it relates to your father. So what viewers don't know is we delayed this podcast so that she could give us the deets. She has some incredible updates just from since we've met her. So we don't want to take up any more time yammering. We want to hear these amazing pieces to your glorious story. So take it away, Sandra.
Start from the beginning.
Yes. So I had two huge mysteries in my life. And when I was 19 years old, my mother had died it was a car fire. And when my dad, Roy, came to tell me that my mom died, one of the first thoughts I had was, I'm never going to find my biological father, because the day before she died, I asked her to draw a picture. She was an amazing artist, to draw a picture of what he looked like, because I didn't have an ethnicity. I would get asked all the time, or especially when I travel outside the country, people will come up to me speaking Spanish. But I didn't know my ethnicity. I didn't have a name. I didn't have a state that he lived in. I had no information. I should say very little. There's some little pieces that I had, but so obviously all this kind of collided at 19 when my parents, when I was 11 years old, they told me that that Roy, the man who raised me, was not my biological father. And I was devastated. I felt like a bunch of lies. I feel like when something traumatic happens, that's when the enemy loves to lie to us.
Yes.
And there was, I felt like I didn't belong. I was the black sheep. I was unwanted. And that was not my parents' intention at all, but that's just what I believe. Like these fiery darts just came at me. And so anyway, so when Roy had told me that my mom had died, I was obviously devastated. I just hit the floor, pounding it, yelling no. And a few days later, the autopsy results came back, and we learned that my mother died of blunt force trauma and that the car fire was actually a cover up to her death. And yeah, so she had died of head injuries. And then the person burned her to cover up what had happened.
Oh, real quick, Sandra, what part of the country did this happen in? What state?
Iowa. It was in eastern Iowa.
I mean, so this is like the stuff of movies and TV shows, and this is your real life.
Yes. And yeah, there's just parts of it that it does, like, you know, when there was a scuffle and because I also had twin sisters at the time, and their father took them. And so that morning, you know, I lost my mother. I lost my twin sisters because their father had taken them. And then I lost the identity of my father. So it was really 4 people in one day.
Wow.
And then a couple days later, when the autopsy results, wait, did I say that? So sorry. Yeah, it was actually, so it was the cover up. And then we waited a long time. And so I'm like going to fast forward like 18 years later. Well, and even at 15 years, because I became really close with the DCI agent and one of the lead investigators, and they said, you know, it's been 15 years. It's really highly unlikely that the case will ever be solved.
Oh.
And that was a devastating blow because I'd always been encouraging, you know, we get one shot at this, that sort of thing. But I went to the DCI agent's retirement party, and this was almost a year to the day of the arrest. But he would introduce me to people, and he was like, this is Sandra. I wasn't able to get her closure. And I'd be like, it's okay. And I was like, it's okay? Like, is it okay? Like, it just was coming out of my mouth, but I was saying it was okay. And it happened a couple times in the introductions that I made. And I went forward because I wanted to just share my gratitude and thankfulness for all of the hard work he had done for all those years. And I told him, I said, nothing you've done is wasted. And I was driving home. And so I met other families that they had got what I wanted. They got the arrest, they got the conviction. Those are things that I had wanted. I wanted justice for my mom. And it turned out that I saw that they didn't have peace in their life. Like they had what I wanted, but not in thinking that would bring me peace. And, and that wasn't the case.
Wow.
So I ended up, when I was driving home, I just felt like just really the Holy Spirit, just supernatural peace filled the car. And I was like, I can let this go. I can move on with my life. Like not let go, like that it didn't matter, but right. Let go of like, it was okay for me to move on with my life, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. Yeah. And I was like, I'm done. Like I'm closing this chapter in my life, and you know, I'm moving on. And it was just peaceful, like just that I'd never experienced in all of those years. And so a year, almost a year to the day of letting go. So I feel like letting go is a weapon. And there are times to let go, and there's times to keep pressing on. But in that, it was time to let go.
Oh,
And he ended up after letting it go, and then one of the other people, because the case was never cold, even though it was a cold case, it was never a closed case.
Okay.
And when one of the officer or the detectives had called me and said, hey, I talked with some producers from the television show Cold Justice, and they want to take a look at the case and see if they can get closure. We can't, guarantee. And my first instinct was, I don't know if I want to do that, because I let it go. Like, I mean, I was
Yeah.
done with it.
yeah.
And my brother really wanted to do it, and we did. And so it was really neat. All the cameras they had there. I mean, that reminded me of obviously a television show too, because there was all these black SUVs, just like you see on TV, at my brother's house, filming it, all the different cameras and everything. And we had to wait a week to find out if they were going to make an arrest, and they did. And still to this day, like, I'm very thankful for the detectives and for the people that worked it, all that time. And it just went to show that it was never wasted. And also that power of letting go, that gave, God room to work in this situation.
So I have a big question. So how was the show able to crack the case when you had these faithful people working on it? Like, what did they have or do that the others didn't have or do?
So a cousin of my mother's had said that my mother called her, and she heard the suspect in the background, and then the phone went dead. So for whatever reason that hadn't been shared at a different time.
Wow. She waited all those years to tell that?
Yeah.
And she never.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that must have been like hard to process. How did you deal with that emotionally?
It just was hard and challenging, and there was a lot of forgiveness throughout the whole thing. And then there was more to come.
Oh, yay. Okay. Can we just go back one more? I'm sorry, but Kim and I are we're piecing this together with our audience. So you said you had a brother.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too.
Also, is he also not Roy's son, or is he Roy's son?
He is Roy's son.
Okay.
So Roy had three kids, me, my brother, and then I had a sister actually that she died at 6 months as a baby.
Oh, that's right. I read about that in heart surgery, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Your mom had quite a bit of pain in her short life. That's so sad.
She did.
And the name of the show was Cold Justice, right?
Yes. And the episode was called Up in Flames.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is
wow. That's kind of hard to even hear. I would think for you to even hear that title is like,
triggering.
Trigger.
Honestly, I've always hated the title. Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, I would too.
We picked something different because that was my mother, and so, yeah.
Wow. Oh, okay. So we just had to fill in a few pieces. You go ahead. So they're getting ready you had to wait a week for them to actually come and arrest him. And then what happens?
And then they said that, yes, we have enough evidence to arrest. And so it was just tears of thankfulness and gratefulness that, even though it was a long journey, that there would be justice for my mom.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Was there a confession? Did he confess once he was arrested?
No.
This is where it gets
yeah, this is where there was more forgiveness involved. So okay, so we waited, it was going to go to trial. it was about a year and a half, and they agreed on a plea deal. And the plea deal was a count of arson, a count of suborning perjury, because while he awaited trial, he had wanted an alibi, or he was trying to buy an alibi from somebody.
Oh,
And then it was willful injury, which is, I guess, unique to Iowa, which is an assault charge.
Oh, no.
he
And
didn't
so,
even get murder.
oh, go ahead. Or
He didn't even get murder.
Not even manslaughter. Not even manslaughter.
And I was in contact with the DCI agent, and what does this look like, the plea deal? And he's like, it's probably, it most likely would be manslaughter. And I was devastated at manslaughter. So when the prosecuting attorney brought, my mom's family in to share this with us, I just couldn't. I just looked down, and every time I thought of those two words, willful injury, I would just cry.
Oh.
And really, even weeks afterwards, I would just cry at those two words. I just couldn't believe that I had waited so long for that. And I did. So then it happens real quick. So they told us on Monday, we're meeting on Wednesday, where they told us the plea deal. And on top of that, it was the Alfred plea, which means that the defendant does not admit guilt, but acknowledges that there was enough evidence to secure a conviction. So that was, because personal, accountability is a big deal to me. And so, just wanting an admittance, I really wanted that. And then it turns out that on Wednesday, then on Friday, that's when they told us all that. We did not have a say in it. They didn't really care. And I was like, what about this? What about this? And they had lost, not the prosecuting. Well, yes, at some point, the head lawyer, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what that is.
Oh, that's okay.
Was it the district attorney?
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
The county attorney.
Okay.
Had said the previous one had the car destroyed because of paying the impound fee. So the evidence had been destroyed. Autopsy results had been lost. Like, there were a lot of things that were
This really is a movie.
there. Say that again.
That this really is a movie of the week. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And your poor soul, you're like, okay, I'm gonna let go and let God, and you're done. And now, boom, it's all coming. And then you have to relive. Oh, my heart is just aching for you. I want to mention one thing though. When this happened, you in your heart felt like it was your mother's ex-boyfriend, right?
Yes. Yes, just because like one time she had asked me, or she had told me that he had tampered with her brakes. Like, she thought he had tampered with her brakes. And this was me. I mean, I was just a teenager, but I was like, Mom, I really think he would do something like that.
Yeah.
And so, but there were a lot of odd behavior type things. But again, until someone's arrested, you don't know, although that's what I had thought,
Yeah. And you were so young when this happened. I mean, how, even if you did know, how would you ever be able to do anything about it? But it did end up being the ex-boyfriend, right?
Yes.
Wow.
The father of the twins. Yeah.
So
The father.
I'm sorry to interrupt too, but so your mother and Roy must have divorced.
Yes.
And then she had this boyfriend who she had the twins with, but didn't marry him.
Correct. She dated him for a month or two.
Oh, wow. Oh, your poor mom. And then she's linked to him
Forever.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. There's just so much here. Amazing.
Yeah.
And you were such a sweet, put together woman. This is like the perfect example of how God, heals us, you know, when we're willing to give him our hurt and our pain, and we're willing to forgive, you can look normal like Sandra. You don't have to go crazy like me. No, your
No.
story really is just so amazing. So you're sitting in the courtroom and you're listening to him getting this plea bargain, and the it was called the Alfred plea.
The Alfred plea. Yeah.
And what that means is, like, I'm not saying I'm guilty, but you have enough evidence that I'm just going to accept it. So he's taking no guilt at all.
No.
Oh, that's such a hard pill to swallow. Okay, so go on.
And aren't you, because this is really your faith story, as much as this is a movie of the week, because man, it would be a good movie. I'd be on the edge of my seat. So, I mean, that sounds so mean. I'm sorry I said that.
No.
Because like, that's not a compliment, you know? I mean, because that means it's all your pain. But anyway, at this point you're thinking, or I'd be thinking, okay, God, I gave this all up. I was over it, and you reopened it, and then you reopened it to like not bring justice, not get a confession, not even get a murder charge. Like, why did you even reopen this? That would be where my mind would go. Is that what happened to you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But later, I want to hear later on about, because I feel like the dream that you had kind of tells us why he ended up getting what he got. But go ahead.
I love it. Dreams are involved.
I do.
That's so good. Okay.
So Friday, so I just had like a real quick time to prepare a victim impact statement. And so I was just really honest. You know, I can't have coffee with my mom. You know, there was that so much had been taken, and that it was really a twisted form of justice, because even though her death was ruled a homicide, that was not what was happening that day, that it was an assault charge.
Right.
And yeah, so, but at the end, it wasn't scripted. Like, I didn't have this in my, you know, I looked at him, he did not look at me, but I asked him to look at me, and he refused. And so I shared with him that that I forgave him, and I forgave him for hitting her, for lighting her on fire, for dousing her with gasoline, because not until I watched the video did I even learn that he had doused her and the car, like to set the car on fire. So really wanted to completely destroy her body. Wow. And yeah, so it was pretty hard, but I meant it. But wow. I think it was sad that he wasn't willing to look at me to hear that. And, you know, in circling, I was really upset. Obviously, it's like kind of like I knew for a month things were going to be rough. I don't know why, but I would like come out of it after a month. But really, I realized that I was carrying the injustice bag, because I have this thing where like I feel like there's heart baggage you can collect along the way, and you have a choice whether to get rid of it or not. And one of them was the injustice bag, and what comes along with that, the victim mentality. And I was like, poor me, because this did not go, just like what Kim was saying, this did not go, and I wasn't really signing up for all of this.
Yeah.
And but the DCI agent said something that no one else could say, only him. Like, no one in my family could say this, but he said, you know, you're making this about you, and it's not about you. And I was
wow.
like, but we had gone through so much. But he was right. Like, it was like, it became my, instead of it being about her, I was taking everything so personally of how it all had unfolded. And I was pretty negative, and that really shook me in that. But I feel like God's justice is that Jesus died on the cross for us.
Yeah.
And that was, he forgave us, and that was justice. And so for me, in forgiving, you know, the defendant and what he had done, that that was love and justice invading the courtroom.
Wow.
And a couple years later, so the sentencing was on February 17th, 2017, I believe. And in 2019, I'd gotten up and I realized I had this dream. And in the dream was the man that killed my mom and his twin daughters. And they were crying happy tears because of the restoration that had taken place in his life. And I had this supernatural love for him, like, I don't know, and compassion.
Yeah.
And it stayed for a while, like after I got up, but like, I don't feel it right now. But at that time, that's what was. And later on that day, I was like, 217. I'm like, doesn't that mean something? And all of it, then I realized, oh my gosh, it was the 2-year anniversary of the day I had forgiven him in the courtroom.
Wow.
And not even being on my register or, but God speaks to me in numbers. 717 was the day he was arrested. 17 is the number of victory. It takes 17 muscles to smile. So my kids know, hey mom, it's 717. And I always declare the enemy is defeated in complete victory. And so many things, even if you look at your emoji on your calendar emoji, it's July 17th. Like, it just.
Hey, Sandra, that's my birthday.
Oh my gosh. Seriously.
My birth date is 7/17/71.
Isn't
Wow.
that crazy?
All 7s and 1s.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So thank you. I'm borrowing all that. 17 muscles to smile. It's the number
Yep.
of victory. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
that is awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, Disneyland 717. That's when Disneyland opened. I mean, there's just
Oh my gosh.
like yeah, the dreamer himself. Like, just a lot of, anyway, really great things have happened on that day. I just consider it just awesome. But
I do too.
Yes, right? I know, that's so, see, and then well, I'll share this part about another 717 a little bit, but let's see, did I cover everything with that?
No, I think we stopped you short. So that morning you realized it was 2/17. It was the 2-year anniversary, and that God gave you that dream. So did you feel like that dream was telling you what was to come?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. And actually, this last weekend, my son does trap shooting. It was nationals, and someone had actually shared a story with me about how they had been carjacked and shot, and this amazing thing that happened when he gave his victim an impact statement. And that's where I was like, you know what? I need to dare to believe that God would get a hold of the person that killed my mom, and that would turn that dream wasn't just like a fleeting dream.
Right.
That I really need to press into that, because I mean, Saul became Paul. There is no one that God cannot touch or move in their life. And I hope that there is restoration in his life, that all the relationships that have been destroyed from this, that there is still good to come from this situation.
That's amazing. Wow.
Possible with God. All things are possible with God. 100%. I believe that.
And what was that verse that you started us off with? You said it was Matthew 5. What was
Mark 5:34?
Mark?
Yeah, and the Passion Translation is the one that says daughter because you dared to believe. It's different in other ones, but.
Oh, I just love that. That is just so perfect.
And then kind of to circle around, so when I finally could go back to the gym without crying, I was listening to a podcast. And in the podcast, they brought up Revelation 2:17. And about a trial, and back in the day, they would give stones, black or white, if it had to do with, if someone was innocent or guilty. And because of that, it made me look at, gosh, maybe 7:17 is a Bible verse. So I did some hunting, and, Isaiah, Psalms, different ones, but I ended up landing, I went back to Revelation, and it talks about the Lamb being like that he will wipe every tear from our eye. And I'm like, that is the great victory, is that we are with him. There's no more tears, no more pain, after all that we've gone through. So,
Man, wow, amazing. So getting back to the part of your story that you alluded to at the beginning, that only your mom knew who your biological father was. And she must have had her reasons for not telling you who he was, right?
I guess so. That's one conversation where I'd love to have with her.
Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't a case where she really didn't know his last name, or.
I really don't know, because I felt so much shame when they told me. I never asked many questions.
Okay.
There was occasional things that she would bring up, like, you dress really nice like your father, or
Wow.
you were conceived in that city that you're visiting. Like just these random.
Wow.
And she definitely knew more about him than probably, than you think. Don't you think?
Say that. I didn't hear that first part. Say that one more
It
time.
seems like she knows more about him than it wasn't a one night stand.
Yeah, but it may have been a weekend or it was a few times. So it wasn't a long standing relationship, I guess.
Okay. Okay.
So,
wow. Okay. So now you've got this with your mom. Before we move on to your dad though, what was the final conviction with your mom's killer? Was he convicted of that assault charge, or how did that end?
yes, because it was the plea deal and giving the victim impact statement. That was it. It was done. And I think one of the really hardest things, and was that it was over. Like, it was over. Like, here's the evidence back. It's so over. And I don't know if it was really like a death, like this complete finality of there's no more, because for years, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it was like, it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I had heard, I haven't looked at, but like in the Passion Translation, I think it's Romans 8, but it says the case is closed. And I'm like, I need a blog on that, because to me, there's never been such a closed case. Then here's the evidence back, and we're done. Like there's no thinking more about it, or whatever.
And that was such a part, like you gave so much emotion and energy to that your whole adult life. You had 1 year where you let it go, but from 19 for the next 18 years, that was a major focus of your thought life, your energy, your emotional life. And so the finality is, what am I going to do with my life now? Probably, right?
Yeah, because it consumed more than I ever should have let it, for sure. Yeah, it was. Wow. But to have that resolution, even when I let it go, I didn't realize how that resolution was needed. Like I had done it, and God, to the best of the ability, but to actually then have it come about, like that was needed. That was needed.
Good. So that was ultimately a healing for you to have the case closed. It was a healing time.
Yes, it took a while, but yes.
Good. So I've heard Graham Cook. I don't know if you've ever listened to his teaching and preaching, but he's a British guy. And he says when we're going through trials, asking why is the wrong question. The question we should be asking is who. And this is how that sounds. Lord, who do you want to be for me in this trial? Who do you want to show me you are? Which part of your character, nature, which name of God, because he has so many names, which name do you want to reveal to me through this trial and tribulation? So my question for you just came to me right now is, who did God show himself as to you through that whole thing with your mom?
I really feel like really daring hope that that's who he was for me, that things are going to turn around. It's not always going to be like this. That, sometimes, I mean, we don't get to say how it looks, and I feel like him being that person and being able to take that territory in my heart and not let it, like it was just the end. Like, I don't know how to, that's a really good question. And I feel like sometimes the best way I process is writing it out.
Yeah, well, maybe you'll write about that. I mean, because just as an observer, I wasn't in it with you, obviously, but it's like he was so many things. He was your rescuer, your deliverer, your justice, your healer. I mean, he came through big in so many of his names and so many facets of his character. Like, if nothing else, in the end, you knew your God was real and that he meets you wherever you are.
Well, yes, um, yeah, he is, like, just even in writing, him being the tear collector and gathering those tears of, and then yet I feel like in another time as the gardener, just taking all those tears and watering them on my dreams and the hurt and the pain and bringing beautiful things from it. So,
Gardener, that's so beautiful. I just watched The Shack again the other day.
Oh.
And the garden scene just did me in. It just did me in. And then my husband and I talked about it for like every time we watch The Shack, we talk about that scene for like a long time. And so the fact that you brought that up, it's like, I want people to know that's a real thing, that he's the gardener of your heart, and he uproots the things that just can't stay there, but he brings beauty. I mean, I said to my husband, I'm like, little did he know that the grave, when he buried his daughter in the garden, that was where the tree was going to spring up from. He had no idea. He was just trusting Jesus, going through this whole thing of letting go. And from that place where he buried his little girl is where the tree, the oak, it was the center of the garden. And it's like this, for you, it's the same. This whole thing you went through, losing your mom to such a brutal act, became the center of the garden of your heart where such life could spring up. I mean, that's what I see when I hear your story. It's beautiful, Sandra.
I really feel like there was a hunger. And I remember at one time that I was on this back road of Iowa. I was like, God, I want to know you so well that when I get to heaven, I'm not surprised. And I feel like he has revealed all these different facets of his heart to me, which I've written about. Someday will be out there for the world. But like, it's like an impossible request, but yet also a impossible, but yet possible.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be shocked, like, oh, I didn't know you were that good, or that you could make ways in the wasteland and streams in the desert, and that you wanted that to be your renown. So I hope that people are inspired and encouraged that he can do the impossible and bring things about.
Amen. Amen.
I don't know how that can be. One of the things, though, that I want to bring up is in the beginning, and my volume went out for a minute, so I don't know if you said this, so forgive me if I'm repeating it, but you went to your mom the night before she passed away with the intention to get her to draw a picture of what your father looked like, because she was she was like an artist, right? And you thought, well, she could probably do this. And if I think in your story, didn't you say like a friend suggested that, like, well, why don't you have your mom draw a picture? And you're like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So you asked her to do that and she was willing, but then unfortunately, the very next day she passed away. So once again, your, true identity of your heritage and your ethnicity and everything was once again taken away from you. But recently, and the reason we kept postponing the show was because God gave you yet another puzzle piece to kind of help you sum up. So can you please, because I've been dying for 3 months to know, can you share with us? I mean, I know you've been dying for, 20 years, but it's been 3 months for me. So can you tell us how that kind of evolved and what happened and who is he?
Yes. So Easter weekend, 3 things happened. I finished the first rewrite of my manuscript, or the last chapter, and then also a cousin, Matt. I had wanted him to. So I have my DNA in trying to find my father on Ancestry.com and 23andMe. So 23andMe has this tree that'll say, oh, these are your maternal and these are your paternal side. Well, I had the thought, I wish Matt, who was on Ancestry, was on 23andMe. And I'm telling y'all, it wasn't 10 minutes. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was like a minute of having that thought that I get an email from 23andMe that Matt wants to share DNA. And I was like, and it's a first, second cousin match, which is very close. Like you can find people on a first, second match on Ancestry or 23andMe. Wow. So I didn't want to come off as desperate, even though I completely was. And I let it go. And so then on Saturday of Easter weekend, I had gotten an email from Eric Schubert, who has ESG genealogy. He is a 19-year-old DNA detective. I had contacted him July of 2019. I think somebody sent me a clip that he helps find people. And he had been inundated with requests, so he didn't have time to do it back then. And so Easter weekend, he's like, I have time if you're interested. I'm like, yes, I'm interested. So he ends up in an hour, he knows my ethnicity, which I didn't know. He knows my grandparents' name, which I didn't know. And so what threw me off with Matt, because, well, one of the first things, just backing up a little bit, one of the first things I was like, let me know if Matt is a paternal or maternal relative. And immediately, he was fast. This wasn't like, let me take some weeks to figure this out for you. I mean, he did it all so fast. Wow. And he said that Matt was paternal. And I was like, I'm going to find him. I'm going to find him. And so, anyway, so I found my grandparents. My Matt, his last name is Polish. So that's why I was like, I think that's my mother's side. And so his aunt, Tessie, who is my grandmother, married Oliver. And so Oliver was from the island of Cape Verde off the coast of West Africa, Cape Verdean. No wonder why I love islands so much. So then they had 4 boys. So this is where I had to wait a month because I wasn't sure which brother it was, because the little bit of information I had, there's 2 of them I just wasn't sure. And so this is interesting. I had another dream. So after I went through a bunch of counseling, obviously I needed it. In 1 week, one of the lies I believed was that I couldn't fulfill the call of my life if I didn't know my ethnicity. So I obviously got rid of that lie. That's so not true. And so I let it go. And I was like, I don't need to know. I don't need to know who my father is. I know my true father, my heavenly father. I'm good to go. Well, God's like, I don't want you to let go of this. So I had a dream and I got this manila envelope, and like it was written in red. She can't ever see this in Sharpie. Like she must never know. Like it was like information I wasn't supposed to get.
Oh my.
And I had it and I was like, oh my gosh, I've wanted to know this information my whole life. And then I woke up and then I was mad because I was like, God, I let this go. Why are you showing me? Nope, you really, really want to know. And so I feel like that was a invitation. And I spoke at the Storyteller Project in Iowa at the Hoyt Sherman Place. And I shared, I still have, so I declared to those 1,200 people, I still have this daring hope I will find my father one day.
Wow.
And with Matt's help, he reached out to Bill, my dad, and I get this, and I have to call Matt because I'm like, well, tell me how it went. And he said he about admitted it all. And I was like, because I'm thinking, I'm going to have a DNA test, it's going to be a big thing. And so, so he's like, he's going to call you. And I'm like, and I just start crying because this wasn't the narrative I had in my head. Like,
Right,
I thought it would be like, I would find him, but he has a life, he's not interested. And that month of waiting, I almost let it go because I didn't know if he had a family. Was I ruining something? I didn't know the dynamics in all his relationships.
Yeah.
But Matt said, I'm going to call him. And so when Matt followed through, and was able to do that, he lets me know he's going to call me. So I get a text the next day and he says, hey, Sandra, I talked with Matt and the story about Jim is true. And he wrote in all caps, I am your father.
Oh my word. Oh my word.
I know. And so he called, he calls and we talk, and he's from New Jersey. He has a New Jersey accent. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying and talking about people I didn't know, but so I have two dads. I have my dad, Roy, that lives in Iowa, and I have my dad, Bill, that lives in New Jersey. I don't know how else to handle it. I'm thankful for both of them. So, but my dad, Roy, had given me a little bit of information about this guy named Jim, and obviously my dad knew him, had done business with him.
Oh.
So he calls me, or we text, we communicate every single day. It is the biggest, amazing blessing. Like, not only that I found him, but that he's fully embraced me as his daughter. I respect his advice. One of the things he has said to me is, you're always loved. And I just love that. Like, so,
Wow. Did he know about you? Your whole
Yeah,
life?
did he? Oh.
no, he did not. Yeah.
Wow. And okay, so to the plaguing question of your ethnicity, what is everything you learned about that?
So so the Cape Island, or Cape Verde Island, was owned by the Portuguese. So I am Portuguese. So I had posted a little bit of my story on Facebook, and the DNA detective, Eric, had listened. And so he did more research for me, and he found the ship manifests that my grandfather, my great-grandfather, the names of the ships that they came to America on.
I love this kid. We have to have him on the show.
I know.
Yeah.
So even more heritage. And I've always loved people's heritage just because I didn't have mine, and it was such a question, and being envious of people knowing things. But I'm like, I got some good stuff. I got some ship names. So
No kidding. Oh my, and what year did your relatives come from that?
Well, a couple of times they would travel back and forth, working the boats. One of them, or maybe both of them, but it was like 1914 was one of them.
Wow.
Maybe I'm so sorry. I don't remember the date.
But no, even just a general time in history is so.
Yeah, the early
fascinating.
1900s.
That's
Yes.
incredible to
Yes.
picture and imagine that you came from their decision to, and here you are. I mean, that's just astounding.
And I love that they were risk takers. My dad told me at one time that one of the times his father came over, they didn't have, like, they got lost at sea. They ran out of food and water. Yeah. So just like that, to be that brave and take that without accommodations.
Right.
Like,
I
that's
know.
so, that's
Wow.
so
So
awesome.
now
I think
the
that
real question. Oh,
your story, you encapsulated your story with daring hope, or just incorporating bravery. So that is such a part of you. It's in your DNA. How confirming is that?
right.
Right. Oh, that's a good, yeah. Yeah. It's
Wow. Like that was your takeaway from I said, what encapsulates your story? And you saw the bravery and the dare to hope. And that's because that is your heritage. That's your family legacy, is to be daring and bold and brave. And here you are carrying on that legacy, not even knowing it was passed to you through your ancestry.
that's so good.
Wow.
I didn't, yeah, that's a great connection. I did not see that. Yeah.
She's
That's
good
awesome.
at that.
Oh, I think it's so beautiful. I think it's so, I just want to meet your DNA friend. I want to know all the things about my family. I want to praise Jesus. I want to give you a hug. There's so much I want to do after listening.
I want to know if she met her dad yet. Did you meet face to face?
We have had COVID issues, state to state things. And so,
strict. Yeah.
so school's starting up here, and I'm actually going to go back to school. So I'm probably, gosh, I hate it, but it probably would be next year. So, but I can't wait.
You know who he is.
What?
Oh.
I said, at least you know who he is. That is the beauty of all this.
And you have him in your life. It sounds like you have a beautiful relationship, that you're both making up for lost time, fully embracing one another. So you call him Dad?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Did that take a little bit, or did that happen pretty quickly?
It was just kind of this, well, I have a dad and then another dad, but I had a conversation with Karis on just some things that he said that were so powerful, and my daughter was like, Mom, he's earned the right to be called Dad. That's for my 14-year-old. And I was like, yeah, it just, even showing me Father God's heart in it, that being immediately accepted, belonging, not having to do anything or perform or achievements, and just be like, I love you because you're my child. Like that just it wrecked me. Like, just his kindness and his kind heart, and just, yeah, I'm very thankful.
I love that.
Oh my goodness. That is just the most beautiful, happiest ending possible. Yes. I mean, I'm so glad we waited.
I know, me too.
Oh, girl, I just love your story, and I'm happy to continue to share it however we can. People do need to hear it. Keep writing. Do all the things you're doing. Don't let anything stop you. Your story needs to be told far and wide. It's so amazing.
Daring to hope. It really is a story of taking that chance, because a lot of us, we're so scared of the disappointment that we don't take that chance and invest the hope. And you hoped, you were giving your hope to God. It wasn't even like you were just throwing it out. Hey, universe, I'm going to hope. You were saying, like, God, I'm trusting you, to the point you even gave it up twice. You're like, okay, I feel supernaturally. And when you described that in the car, it was so beautiful, because you were like, it supernaturally was gone. And being able to forgive the man that murdered your mom. I know that feeling of forgiveness where it's not even necessarily that you want to, it's you have to. It's a need to give it to him so that you can be whole. And you've obeyed God all throughout this walk. It's just such a beautiful lesson. And all these pieces that came together, that's not a coincidence at all. That's you obeying God each and every time. And then him going, okay, here's the other piece of the puzzle. Because
Yeah.
it just wasn't time. So it's so beautiful. And then the final outcome is you find out who your daddy is, you know? I love it. I love this story and I love you. It's so beautiful.
And you can say, I'm Portuguese. That is so
Hi, girl. You get to be
so
Portuguese.
cool. I love that. I love that.
To have an answer is it's so nice instead of like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I have an answer.
Wow. Well, Sandra, this has just been such a blessing for us, for our viewers. Thank you for your vulnerability, and
Yes.
there's a lot of raw pieces to your story. But Heather said something that I want the viewers and listeners to not miss. She said, and then God gave you another puzzle piece. And all of our lives are puzzles that are slowly filled in.
Amen.
And yours definitely had more intrigue than most.
It
But we
did.
all have just part of a picture of who we are and where we're headed. And what I want everybody to take away from this is it was when you let go and truly just fell into your Father's arms is when he gave you the biggest pieces of that puzzle. And somebody watching and listening right now needs to just let go and trust that God's intent is never to keep the puzzle from you forever.
That's right.
You might not get all the pieces on this side of heaven, but you will get all the pieces. He promises.
Yeah.
And your story does give us daring hope that we can hope that all the pieces will be filled in so beautifully because God is kind. He's kind. He's generous. He's faithful. And he is the Father that just says, I love you because you're mine, not because of what you do, not because of what you look like or what your last name is. I love you because you're mine. Come enter into my heart. So I hope everybody takes all of that and just lives it. Don't just listen. Don't just be touched. My new favorite saying is, don't just be moved to action. What is an action you can take based on Sandra's story? Ask the Lord what that action is and do it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And remember that God wrote the story. So, you know, I think one of the things I admire most about you, Sandra, is because letting go sometimes is the hardest thing we ever have to do, especially for someone like me. I'm the question asker. I want all the answers and I want them now. But being able to say, okay, I'm going to let go. God knows the best time. And, you know, maybe at 19, you're just not prepared to handle all of this. That was so much for a child, really, someone who's just becoming an adult. So I love the way, even in this, we can see God's love for you. He just protected you over and over and over again and made sure, you know, and even the way that things evolved, he made sure you were at a place where you could handle it, you know, like he let it go for a while and then he builds it back up. But that's how God does all our stories, right? I mean, it's just something we need to learn. Kim and I have a saying, and it's cute. It's a joke that we do, but it's living the let go life. And it really is about like just letting it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, because it's God. He knows the answer. He already knows the end. He wrote it. He can do it, you know, but it's so hard to do that. And you did. You are just this beautiful example of, you know, obeying your Father. I love it. You're an inspiration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please keep in touch with us. We want to have you back on when your book is released and help get, you know, help promote that. And we just want to help advance you in your mission. We believe in you and what you're doing and your story and your heart and your destiny. So, yeah.
And a picture of your dad. We want to see your dad. Even if you put it together.
Yes, you know, we'd love to have you when you get to meet him in person and hear about that. And So please keep in touch with us. We've just enjoyed immensely having you on the show, Sandra. You took us on a roller coaster today
Oh,
and
it's great.
loved it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much
Thank you
for having
so much.
me.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of Coffee with Kim. As always, be extraordinary.
And tell your story.